So, hello everyone. This is Anna Bridge MD, a little of me. This is a CoExist meeting. Hi everyone. Zoe is awesome, and she's going to be the interviewer because I have lost my voice, and I'm going to stop right here. Thank you, Zoe. Take it away.
Thank you. Well, hello everyone. My name is Zoe Wolszon, and I am so honored to be here standing in for Isabel. I know that I won't be able to fill her shoes, but I'll do my best. I apologize that I do not have the beautiful French accent, so I just really start at a disadvantage. But I am so excited to be here tonight with Jordanna, who is going to share a little bit about her story, as well as more about psychedelics in terms of differences between recreation and more kind of therapeutic journeys and what we know about that. So thank you for being here. And I'd love to start by just asking you to share with everyone a little bit about you, your background, and kind of your story.
Sure. So I think first, I just want to start off with a little land acknowledgement. So if everyone can just close their eyes for a minute and take a nice deep breath and get silent within themselves and really feel that breath in your chest and calming your system. And feel that breath going all the way down into the tips of your fingers and the soles of your feet. And try to notice, if you can, the land beneath your feet. And feel the land. And really try to lean in to all the beauty that that land has seen and offers us. And also all the pain that it's seen before we got to this point. And I'd really like to take a minute to acknowledge those who came before us of the Ute and Arapaho and Cheyenne tribes and the Navajo people and Lakota. And there's so many that came from Colorado and have lived in this land and fought this land and been here in this land. And everything living in indigenous cultures is sacred and connected and valuable and honored and are equals. So from the plants to the medicines, to the people, to animals, it is all honored and are equals. And that's kind of important in this conversation. And by acknowledging the land that we're on and that we took over from the people and the harm that we've caused indigenous people, and even the harm that we continue to cause our Mother Earth, we can begin to understand truth. And, when we're searching for truth, true internal healing and physical and mental healing can actually happen. So that's it.
What a beautiful way to start. Thank you.
So anyhow, I am Jordanna Quinn. I'm a physical medicine and rehab physician by training. My journey, I have always been more holistically medicine minded. So even in medical school, we have every month we learn a new system, and I always did the alternative medicine, whatever you call it, PowerPoint presentation on it or whatever. And so that was always my okay, well, cardiovascular, well, this is how we can, learn about it holistically or whatever. So that's just kind of always been in my blood, I think. And so I went into a general musculoskeletal pain practice first out of practice, and it just never sat well with me. I was giving high doses of opiates and begging people to take care of themselves, and I hated my job. And it just didn't align with who I was and why I became a physician, which was to truly help people in their health and their well-being. And so really early on, actually in residency, I learned about something called regenerative medicine, which is using your body's platelets and stem cells to actually heal itself and regenerate tissue and regrow tissue. And so I was like, I'm gonna do that. And so eventually I found a practice in Colorado that did regenerative medicine. So they hired me to be their sports medicine doc. And this doc was an anti-aging physician. And I was like, I don't even know what that was. But it was essentially something called functional medicine. We're really focusing on lifestyle changes and diet and health. And as soon as I joined that practice, I literally felt at home in medicine. I was like, I could do this as a doctor. This is what I want to do. It just made sense to me to really focus on the person as a whole, as opposed to just medicine after medicine or whatever. So I had that mentor. I did their regenerative medicine, got trained in anti-aging medicine. And then eventually opened my own practice because I don't know, I think just, you think you can do it better or something. That at least is how I like ended up in my own business. And then in terms of psychedelics, so never as a physician did I think I would be doing psychedelics. That was never in my sphere of medicine at all. And I don't do mental health. But in the world of medicine where you can really help patients transform, you really realize, I mean, mental health and coaching is so much of an important part of who you are physically and healthfully and who you believe you can become. And so anyhow, years ago, this medicine man was coming to Colorado. He'd already come, and my husband did medicine called Bufo or 5-MeO-DMT with him. And my friends who had gone, they didn't really say much about it, I guess. But anyhow, he was coming back, and my friend brings him out here. And so my husband was like, "It's 15 minutes. You should try it." And I was like, I could do anything for 15 minutes. Literally was my attitude. I didn't research it. I didn't read about it. And at that time, my business was less than a year old, and I support my whole family. I mean, I just took out a business loan and started. My husband was a stay-at-home dad. And I was just like, okay, I was meditating on show me the way in my business. Literally that was it. I every morning would wake up and just be like, hey, show me the way in my business. And I literally had no idea what to expect. I was like, it's going to tell me to post more on Instagram or no idea. And so I went in and it changed my life. I mean, it was 15 minutes. We did it twice, but it changed my life in a couple of ways. One of them was that now I do psychedelics in my practice because I just realized the power of the medicines. And it wasn't an overnight hey, I did this and now I'm going to do psychedelics. That's a whole kind of another story. But in working now essentially in the human performance and optimization realm of just optimizing your health, really realized the power of the brain. And if we can't break through these glass ceilings that we place on ourselves or the traumas that we have and the stories we tell ourselves, we really can't achieve any health goal that we want or anything we want in life. And as a physician, my goal is to help you be as healthy as possible so that you could be the best version of yourself in the world, right? If we're all healthy and happy, then we're impacting the world in a positive way. So it's kind of my philosophy is very simple. But the really so that was a huge just realization for me. And then the really impactful thing that was I'm going to just try to describe the indescribable, but I think in my setting an intention and really meditating on this thing, you start reconnecting these neural pathways in your brain of focusing on that, which is why I believe part of my experience was so powerful. So in the journey, which was the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced in the entire world, I mean, you're in another realm. I mean, this medicine is you smoke it, and then, within seconds, you are completely out. Terrifying if you think about it. And I was one with the universe, and you get these things that you can't understand in this realm, but you really understand the connection that we are with the plants and with Mother Earth and with each other, and how can we, war and hate and it's real. It is real in those spaces. Yeah. And then I had all these other beautiful experiences, and there was a split second where it's there's no need to be afraid or anxious. Mm-hmm. And I never would have classified myself as anxious until that experience. Then I go back to my normal life. I mean, for 2 months after that, as close to literally as possible, I could not feel my feet touch the ground. I mean, I was floating, and I was a completely different energetic being. And again, this is describing my science brain doesn't even understand this, but my husband would be you're vibrating from across the room. Nothing bothered me. I didn't drink coffee. I didn't drink alcohol. I didn't yell at my kids. Literally, nothing bothered me. And it was so that fear and anxiety that I didn't even know I had until it was gone. Yeah. I mean, I was intellectually, I knew nothing had changed. I go see my patients, but I was floating, and it lasted for 2 months. A 15-minute experience lasted for 2 months, which I could say because every day, because I'm a skeptic and non-believer, I'd be this isn't real. What is it? Where is the thing I'm feeling? And so I remember the day, this butterfly, and I was it's back. I told my husband, I was God damn it, I looked too hard. It was amazing. I felt so good. So that was really the life-changing part for me. I mean, in terms of just recognizing this immense power that these medicines have. And so, I mean, since then, it's been life-changing for my practice, for my patients, for so many things. I mean, it has impacted the ripple effect for my life. Has been so vast and widespread. Yeah.
Wow. Well, amazing story. And thank you for sharing. I have about 1 million questions.
I
But
can only do 999.
perfect. All right. I think that's what we have time for. But one of the things you mentioned that I want to dig into a little bit more before we kind of move into the practice piece is where you talked about your science brain, right? And you have this experience, you know that something's different, and your science brain as a trained physician and scientist is going, this doesn't make sense. It can't be real, right? So what is that experience like for you, and how do you navigate that, tension?
I will say the tension is very real every single day of my life now, because I want to understand. And I very much, while I practice in the alternative medicine space, I mean, I very much am scientifically brain-minded, and I'm willing to take risks in my practice and with my patients and my business, but realizing the power of, energy, we were talking about this earlier, but in medicine, there's so much we don't understand, but we like to walk around like physicians, like we understand everything and we know it all, and we learn a lot, and it's true. But our cycles as women all connect, when we live in the same house. That's still inexplicable, but we don't acknowledge that's, even though it's very real, when we don't have any idea how the frick that happens, like it happens, right? Yeah. That is energy. That is something up here that we can't explain, right? And it's still like we're trying to do studies and all the things, but so there is something very real that we have to acknowledge about energy that really exists that we don't in medicine. And so there's, I'm sure there's other examples, but the menstrual cycle is just obvious to all women. And so, but every day and the more I practice in the psychedelic realm and see things that, we'll hear stories have happened that are real, like I'm not a psychopath. These things happen. You're like, you just can't describe it and you have to accept. And that's part of the indigenous culture, and so diving into psychedelics and just respecting the indigenous culture, who are so connected to Mother Earth and so connected to plants and animals and how they work, realizing this beautiful way that they live is important. Yeah. And so that's also a struggle too, is for me, cultural appropriation, and how do I honor these medicines in this world that I only understand in a micro bit about, how can I honor it and do it justice and practice within my scope as a physician. It's hard. Yeah.
I'm curious, what ways have you found to learn more about the indigenous cultures and their relationship with these medicines? And
it's hard with the indigenous cultures for me, because they obviously have a lot of mistrust of white people, and they're trying to be protective of their land, and they deserve, there's a lot of reciprocity, and I don't know, there's things that have to happen, right? And so I go to a ton of psychedelic meetings just to always try to learn more and interact with people of all walks of life. I think honoring, for me, if I'm going to go do a psychedelic journey, which I don't do them that often, there's plenty of people who do it all the time, I go the indigenous route or the shamanic route, as opposed to a white person who's now serving, which is funny because I obviously am doing it, but so I just try to learn more about their culture, and hope that someday, I have a friend who's a therapist, and also a curandera from Mexico, so trained, and I talked about this with her, and just how do I navigate this? And she's just you're the bridge. She's I've been told that we're the bridge to white people and indigenous people, because you care, because there's some people who just go into it and just I'm gonna do it, doesn't matter, fuck it, I want to make a bunch of money, or whatever their motivation is. So just by, not just by caring, there have to be actions taken, but so that was nice to hear, trying to be a bridge, at least, as opposed to just my way or the highway.
Right. And especially, I think, the desire to learn and understand and be able to put things into the context kind of from which they're coming. So I think that in itself is powerful, and it's never going to be a perfect or easy balance, but I do think that's really powerful.
Right. I live in a house that's comfortable, and I drive on streets, I play my part in maybe destroying Mother Earth too much, but also try to be mindful of it and do it less so, and conscious of it. And, there was I read this book actually before I did any psychedelics or was in this space, and I forget what it was called. It's a Tom Brown book, but it was about indigenous cultures. And there was just one line I remember when the kid was trying to learn to become an elder or whatever. And he did a vision quest, and the elder was teaching him about feeling the land. And this was like, I don't know, I'm going to botch it, but, and the elder was something like, oh, a rabbit's going to come from here in 7 minutes, and then this is going to happen and whatever. And the kid had like set up a trap and is trying to figure out his way. And then, sure enough, the exact thing happened. Like 7 minutes later, a rabbit comes from this way and not that way, and did whatever the things that he did. And the kid was like, how did you know that was going to happen? And the elders responded, if a rabbit was walking on your back, you would know it. And I was like, oh, well, like, right, you're that in tune. Like, we have no clue. I mean, we have no clue, right? I wasn't born like that. I wasn't raised like that.
Right.
I've lived in cities. Like, even camping for me was like new in my 20s, right? Like, I mean, I had no clue about Mother Earth. Like, it's just so far removed from our culture. And so really just trying to get as much as I can in between being a mom and a physician and all the things, like in my free time, like really like dive in and try to like be more at one and feel the earth. And I'm an osteopath, so I have a little bit of an advantage in terms of like holding physically other people and feeling their bodies. But I don't know what question you asked for. It's just like,
No, it's wonderful. But I think that's a great segue into talking about your practice as a physician and how psychedelics kind of interact with the work that you do. And kind of how that has changed the way that you practice medicine for your patients.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. It's been an evolution. I will say, so in the science brain and like trying to navigate and sometimes accepting like the universe presents itself and, it gives you opportunities as opposed to like, but the science shows this and I have to, right? Because I can't practice medicine based on like how I feel. Like I can't, I felt this is right for the patients. I'm going to do it. Like, I can't.
Yeah.
However, so when it was a year process for me, like after, like, I was like, because it did come to me, not during my Bufo journey, but soon thereafter, it was like, you have to be the one. And it was as strong as the day I knew at 14 that I was going to be a doctor. Like, it would not leave me. It was like, you are the one. And I was like, but I don't want to be the one, or I'm not the one. And I like it because I also used to work with addicts and heroin addicts specifically, but they would be addicted to everything, ketamine and anything under the sun. So I was like, well, and ketamine is what's legal for physicians to do. So I was like, you can't do ketamine. Like, no, like I worked with addicts. It's addictive. I don't want to do it. So I went through all of this mind drama and I was like, you're the one, you have to do this. And it was just like, fighting with yourself. There's no way I'm not doing that. I didn't spend 1 billion years of my life to become a doctor to like give people drugs. That was, I mean, seriously, that was my, like, I was
especially with that association and with strong and visceral and emotional, against kind of ketamine.
Yeah. So I mean, I had all this drama, and then I finally, like, I don't know what the moment was, but I gave into it about a year later, and I was like, I'm just going to do it. And as a PM&R doc, I was trained in ketamine for pain, so I knew how to do ketamine or whatever. So I was familiar with the substance. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. So I hosted a retreat in my house for my friends. And, like we did meditation and yoga, and I was like, okay, we're going to do ketamine, or they're going to do ketamine. It was beautiful. I mean, it was what it was, because I've also had this desire pre-psychedelics as a physician to have this space where people could come for like healing, like a retreat center, but where you're going to spend a week with me and we're going to work on like your physical health and do the things. So I've already had this desire as a retreat, which is where that day retreat came from. But anyway, so I did that for my friends, or my friends, and then asked them about their experience, and we downloaded, and literally within like the month of deciding I was going to do it, I had 3 patients ask me, do you do ketamine?
Wow.
Like, I did put it out there, I did put it on my website, so the answer was yes.
Okay.
So so this is like the universe working. I mean, nobody had ever asked me in my life before then, and I decided I was going to do it, and 3 patients asked me within a month.
Which is, harkening back to what you were saying about the energy and all of the different pieces that we can't understand.
Yeah. So, I mean, I started off very conservatively. I do it very different now, but I do my ketamine room, which is just, I mean, it's a treatment room, but it's very, I mean, I have stones, and I always light a candle because fire is important in the indigenous setting, because that helps you like transmute your bad energy. And I try to keep it as sacred as possible in a medical setting. So it's not completely doctor, anybody can go to a ketamine clinic and get an infusion, and then no one talks to them and they walk out and they're like, I don't know, you didn't get a benefit, or you did. And I'm like, oh my God, that's not the way. Like, my patients set intention, or at least I give them intention paperwork, and we talk about it on the front end, and we really try to dive deep, because I believe that part of my big transformation was because of the intention. Had I just gone in there with like, oh no, let's go do the things, like it would have been very different.
Right.
And then I sit with my patients afterwards. I mean, it's a lot of my time and try to integrate and help them. And like, and so there's a little bit of a ceremony around it. I have done like in the indigenous culture, you do a prayer to the 7 directions, which is a very beautiful prayer. And so sometimes when I find it appropriate, I will do that too. I did it to have a teenager we could talk about later. That we did that, and that was transformative for her, just like spending that time honoring the 7 directions and whatever that meant to her. So you just kind of get a sense for patients and what they need or what they want. I still follow like the guidelines of like you do a series of 6 over the course of 3 weeks and that sort of thing. And then it's kind of what the guidelines are, a series of 6 and then every 3 weeks. So I'm kind of like, do a series of 6, then we'll see where you're at. We try to get, I mean, depending on what people are coming to me for. I like to get people off antidepressants. I like to get people off meds that they're taking every day if possible. Some people just come to me because they're curious. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of all over the board, but it fits so much into, again, like optimizing your performance, right? Like I have had patients who have a lot of gut health issues that is 100% related to anxiety and like trauma as a childhood, but they don't know that because they're focused and like, I can't eat anything. And I'm like, humans are meant to eat the things, you know? Like, so, and we work on their, but they have to be, they're not ready to hear that. You can't be like, it's in your mind. Like, you know, like that's not right.
It's in your mind. So just change that and then you'll be good.
Right. So like by digging into people's traumas and like really getting into their trauma that they even want to admit, like I've seen people completely heal from their gut stuff.
Yeah. So one of the things, you know, and again, this is a tricky question because I know we don't understand it all. And we talked about the science and the pieces we can't understand or explain. But I'm curious, from the research and the things that are out there, do we have a sense of what it is about psychedelics or ketamine that physiologically is able to affect mental health, other parts of our physical health?
Yes and no. But I mean, the short answer is no. But so first of all, all ketamine is different from all psychedelics. Okay. So bupo, psilocybin, ayahuasca, there's others, there's lots of them, all affect your serotonin system. And what's nice about ketamine for my patients is that if they're on antidepressants, they can take ketamine because it actually affects like your glutamate system. So it affects a completely different system in your brain. Okay. So essentially except ketamine, all the psychedelics do is they activate your serotonin system. And so they activate serotonin in your brain, you increase serotonin, but it's doing it non-specifically all over your brain. So it's kind of like you turn on all of these nerve signals all at once. And so things that didn't connect before and don't connect in our day in and day out connect.
Interesting.
Which is fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Ketamine works by inhibiting the inhibitors. So it's inhibiting GABA, which is an inhibitor, and therefore causing activation. So it's like this indirect activation of your brain. But it is different. So ketamine has been studied and is approved for treatment-resistant depression, treatment-resistant anxiety, PTSD in veterans. I mean, it's not covered by insurance, but it is approved for those things and been studied for those things. And it is kind of all over the board in terms of how long it lasts, because there are some people who respond, well, like anything else. Some people respond, some people don't. Some people who do a few treatments and are like cured, and then some people who need the consistent follow-up.
Got it.
So they act differently. So not everyone is going to respond to one versus the other. So ketamine specifically also binds to one of your pain receptors. So it's been used for a long time in the pain management space. And so they actually took out that component in ketamine and it didn't work as well, essentially. Like, so there's something about also stimulating for ketamine specifically your opiate pain receptors, short-term that helps with long-term benefits, which is interesting. That doesn't make sense to my head. I mean, that makes sense for the pain component, but that also was in terms of a depression component as well. The other psychedelics don't work on pain receptors that we know of. They just bind to the serotonin system. But there are there's lots of research in trying to figure out, like, you know, what's a good dose and all that. But what is consistent across the board is that you do need to reach like like a mystical state, or I forget what they call it, but basically you need to be out of your brain. Like just doing so. There's all this stuff in microdosing, which I actually don't want to talk about, but but microdosing might have benefits, but not at all in the same way, and completely different. Like there is a need to be like outside of yourself to achieve the benefits across all the board of all the psychedelics.
So that actually brings me to, I know one of the questions here was around the idea of a lot of these can be used recreationally versus for kind of therapeutic journeys. And so I'm curious, how do you differentiate? Like, is it dosage? Is it setting? Is it the context, the intention? Like, how do you differentiate between those two use cases?
Yeah, I think they're hugely different. And so dosing wise, I mean, I don't know what people are doing when they're partying, but like, I think they're probably doing much lower doses, honestly. And there's something, again, with ketamine specifically called a K-hole. And people are like, oh God, I don't want to go into a K-hole. I actually want to achieve that in my office, right? Because it's a high dose, but I can't imagine trying to, I mean, at least what I'm doing in my office, like if someone tried to party like that, that would be scary as hell. I mean, there's no way. It's essentially like they're paralyzed. I mean, ketamine is different also in that it causes dissociation. So you don't know you're a human, like there's no sense of self and body, so you can't move. So that's like the K-hole. That would be terrifying. You know, you're trying to dance or maybe have a conversation, and then suddenly like anything could happen. Like there's no, I don't know.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, right. So I'm sure there's different in doses, but also in terms of, well, just like that example, right? Like I think partying can be very, you know, I think the human connection is so important, and I think we all know. After COVID, you know, people work from home and people are missing the human connection. That is causing huge problems in depression, anxiety, and just social structure. And people are craving a lot of that. And in general, psychedelics help you connect. In partying, even if there's a connection and that's beautiful, like I think there can be benefit in partying, I think. However, I think part of the problem is you're trying to be normal. So you take whatever and you're trying to, I'll just dance because in my mind, you're always dancing.
I'll dance with you so you're not by yourself.
So you're dancing, like, but then if there's this disconnection with self, or you're trying to be normal. So like, I don't know, you're like, I guess I would imagine it if like you're super drunk and then you like are stumbling. You're like, oh God, did anyone see that? Right. So now you're like trying to be normal, but you're like stumbling. So that's uncomfortable and that's not fun, or right?
And you're also not experiencing what you're trying to experience because you're pulling back into
so like if you're taking a psychedelic, kind of the same, like if you're seeing things or not seeing things or disconnected from your body, like you might be more connected with the people that you're hanging out with if you're sitting and having good conversation, because I do think you can have amazing conversations, but you're not fully relaxed because you're trying to be normal. And I think in general, we live in such an external world, right? We're talking, and then I don't know, for me, I see patients all day and I have kids, and like we are like praised in the society for being external. Nobody's praised for like being in a corner reading a book, or just being an introvert or meditating or whatever. But when you're journeying, so you're going internal. I mean, you are going, the purpose is to discover yourself and to grow as a person and to really know, for me, it's always like, what's holding me back? How can I be a better person or a better boss or a better mom? And there's nothing more beautiful than that. And it is scary as hell every single time, because it's always like, what am I going to discover about myself? But you're only afraid of yourself, of your thoughts. Like nothing actually is going to happen. And so the beautiful space also about journeying, when you're doing it with a guide, is there someone there? Like I'm there present with you. So you can totally relax. Like, I mean, I am not going to let a damn thing happen to you. So you're not going to get up and go crazy. And if you try to, I mean, I haven't had to hold anybody down, but you know, like I am there to make sure you are safe and to make sure you are okay. And I've had people on a scary journey and you can tell that they're scared or whatever. And I'll go and put my hands on them or whatever it is. And you know, just to let them know that they're here and they're alive and they're not, I mean, there's people who thought they died and like that feels scary, but they're totally safe. And so being able to relax into that space and know that you are literally like held, I mean, is a wonderful, beautiful space to be in. And I love being that person for people. I mean, yeah, it's just so that's also different. It's just the ability to like go to wherever you're going to go, and it's all in your mind. But it's not, because you can bring these things forward. Like these experiences are real. and it's hard to describe. Again, it's like trying to describe the indescribable, but they are real and you are in it and you get to bring this information forward into this realm and you have the choice to do something about it. And so I tell all my patients, like, you could have fun and this could just be like a fun 2-hour journey and then you go off and you live your life, or you get to choose to have this impact your life, and is every journey impactful? No, probably not, but you actually do have a choice. Like, you have a choice to, I don't know, do whatever you want in life, go listen to the Dalai Lama and you can be like, cool, good lecture. Or you can be like, oh my God, I'm going to incorporate what he said and I'm going to take it, I'm going to move forward. Like, it is the same, like anything in your life, you have a choice. But so again, the integration is important in what you do with the information. And there's some amazing information that is told in these different worlds that we just don't have access to. I mean, I do think some people do. I mean, I have a friend and she's like, I meditate and then I go to different worlds. And I'm like, that is awesome. You never need to do psychedelics. I don't have that, ever, right? Like, I can't get there. So I view them a little bit as just an ability to kind of like rocket ship our ability to evolve.
Yeah. Well, I'm so curious. It sounds like, you do have patients who probably have something that's kind of fun and move on, and people that have probably that entire spectrum of how profoundly it affects them and their life. Are there patterns or factors, things that you see in your patients that really determine kind of how impactful it's able to be? Like, is it buy-in? Is it intention? Is it continuity? Are there things that really lend themselves to effective use?
I mean, I think intention and buy-in and continuity are all important. And so is it like you have to do 6 or you have to do a certain amount? No, but I do, the effects do dissipate over time, so it is, I do think doing them probably a couple of times a year is, I don't know, everyone's different, but just going back into the world and then, remembering, I mean, again, I think there are other ways to access these states that aren't psychedelic. So I do think the intention is important. I do think, going in, I have my patients, or I mean, I don't follow them out of my office, but I tell them to, like, they should go. I live in Golden, so we're near mountains. I'm like, go for a hike after this. Like, just be with nature for a minute. Like, just don't go back and get in your car and then go be like a father and then, because you're just not going to integrate. You're not going to just take a minute. And then I tell them, like, take 5 minutes a day, like every morning, wake up and at least think about your experience. Because that, is part of the integration and part of the learning. And then part of, I mean, studies do show that, I mean, ketamine and psychedelics, but ketamine rewires your brain, right? So you imagine it like you go sledding, right? If you start off on a completely blank sledding hill, you can go anywhere, right? Well, that's beautiful. That's when you're a baby, right? But then, I mean, you have things that happen to you when you're a baby and as a kid. And so you start creating these pathways in the sled. And over time, you put your sled down. And even if you want to go over there, you're going over there.
Right.
And that's what happens in our brain. Right. We create habits, we are habits. And so we wake up and we've created habits in our brain. And those are neural pathways that just fire with subconsciously without thinking about it. So ketamine does kind of give you that new snowfall so that you can rewire your brain. Now, it doesn't always happen the first time, but that is essentially kind of what psychedelics are doing, is like a new snowfall. So like, how do I want to like rewire the pathway? But rewiring it takes consistently going down that path, right? And like thinking about it. It doesn't just happen because you want it to. So, I mean, I do tell patients, I mean, with everything I do in my practice, I'm like, the medicine isn't going to change your life. Like, you're going to change your life, but the medicine can help you, right? And I think that's 100% of things I do in my practice. Like, I'm not going to change your life. Like, a pill isn't going to change your life, but you might feel good for a little while.
Yeah.
So
that's super helpful to hear, because I was going to ask about some of the tools that you use. And so you mentioned intention setting worksheets, going out in nature afterwards, the kind of morning thinking through it. And it's really cool to hear how you practically kind of set your patients up for success,
right,
to be able to leverage, the medicine for the most positive effect.
Yeah.
So that's really cool.
Yeah. I mean, like, my goal would be that everyone just gets better, and then tell your friends about me, because I need a business, but I don't need my business on you coming back every day. Right. Like, there's enough people in the world, I think. But, I host retreats, which I love hosting retreats. So I host like 4-day retreats, and that's like, then you're spending time with 5 or 10 people, and we do meditation and we do yoga, and then, I mean, because there's so much healing that happens in community, right? I mean, there's one-on-one amazing things that have happened in my office, but in community, like, when I'm in a room, like doing ketamine or psilocybin with people, I mean, I feel people's energy. And, we all kind of feel people's energy, but aren't tapped into it. I'm not tapped into it a day in and out. But like, I mean, I am with people on their journeys. Now, do I know what's going on in their mind? No. But like, I don't know, there's something about it that you just feel. And that didn't happen overnight. I mean, I wouldn't have said that 2 years ago. I would have been like, I don't know, just do the things. But now I'm like, oh my God, I like feel this power in this room.
Yeah.
And so to see the transformation that happens with people over the course of 4 days is awesome.
That sounds amazing.
So I like the multi-day, because that's really when you can make impact and help people. And, you have community and conversation, and then people realize you're not all that different. I mean, we all are unique, but the same. So I don't know. So I had this one experience. Cannot make this up. And I never would have believed it if someone just told me this happened. But this happened recently. So a patient flew out to see me for ketamine. So we did 5 days in a row. And again, I spend a lot of time with my patients, like on the upfront and then at the end. I mean, I really love that connection. Anyhow, so we're in the room. I want to say it was her 3rd-ish day of ketamine. And I was just in the room with her. And I don't always stay in the room the whole time, but I could just tell she was struggling like internally. And so, I knew like her story. This wasn't like happenstance. And so I held her ankles. In my mind, I was like, you are perfect. And I looked at her intently, and I'm like, you are perfect. And I was like, I should tell her that, because I could tell she was struggling. But you're listening to music and like in a different world. And I was like, I'm not going to ruin her journey, whatever. She had earbuds in. And so I was just like, oh gosh, I hope you're okay. Whatever, you're perfect. So afterwards we're downloading, talking about the things and whatever, how she might've moved on. And she goes, did you say you are perfect? That is the first thing I wrote in my journal. And I was like, and I just started like crying, no joke. I was like, never in my life has that happened, where, I mean, it was so intent, like saying that in my mind. And that was the first thing she wrote down. So, I mean, you cannot make that stuff up. Like, so that's what I mean. Like this, like inexplainable, like energy where you're just like, you cannot make that up.
Well, and I admit, I know we talked about it. I struggle with that as like, an engineer and someone that's very much in sciences. And so I just I just have such a hard time wrapping my brain around it, while recognize that, like, I believe it.
But then it's hard to believe because you want to understand.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's definitely a frame of mind I struggle with. I am curious, especially as you're hosting, as patients are coming in, you're hosting retreats, do you have people that come to you that are like, man, I really want to do this, but I feel like what I hear is I'm so scared of having a bad experience. Totally. I'm so scared of having a bad trip. I don't know if I can do it. How do you talk people through that, and what does it look like, for them to almost relinquish into it?
So I never talk anyone into doing it. It's up to their complete decision. But I think, so you kind of mentioned this and we didn't go there, but set and setting are important. And set and setting being like, I mean, I think just as a physician and holding space as a physician for people, because I own my own practice and I don't take insurance, I got to do whatever I want. I spend time with people. I listen to them. And I mean, I just listen. And so you get a sense of them and you get a sense of who they are, and kind of just hearing them, what's important to them and what their belief system is in terms of their health and in terms of whatever. And so creating that container of trust is important. And so I've turned people down sometimes because they're like, I just want to do ketamine. And I'm just like, I'm not the one for you. You can go anywhere and do that. But, so if they're scared, like I'm like, this is what to expect. This is, for ketamine, it's going to kick in within 2 minutes. It's going to feel either dizzying or terrifying or just amazing and relaxing. I say, take the third approach. I'm going to be here.
Like good advice.
I'm going to be here the whole time. If you're scared, nothing's going to happen to you. Kind of things we talked about. Like, I'm here. There's nothing that is going to happen to you. But it's never like, if someone's like, I don't want to do it, it's like, great. I'll see you when you're ready. But I just talked them through exactly what it's going to feel like. It's essentially, then it just feels like a dream, and then you're coming out of it and like a little confused, maybe like when you're coming out of the dream. But I think you just tell them what it's like, and then we've already established a relationship of trust. So I do an initial visit with everyone, even my retreat clients, because I travel for retreats. So we do a discovery call over the phone, and there's some people who I'm like, this is not for you. This isn't the right fit. So we talk over the phone, and then like in the retreats, we all get there in one evening beforehand, and I do a prayer to the 7 directions, and we talk about creating a safe container. Maybe do some breath work or kind of whatever it feels like. And then people have dinner together and kind of get to know each other. And so it is this container of safety. People can't come and go. People can't just show up and be like, sure, yeah, I'll see you. Like, it's just, to me, that container of safety is important because the vulnerability is important so that we can heal again, in healing, there has to be trust, and in trust, there's healing. And so, I don't know.
Yeah.
So
No,
setting is important.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I almost feel like the one word that is just on my mind so strongly after listening to you is this idea of connectedness, like from the flooding the serotonin receptors to the way that, you know, connecting to the earth, connecting to other people in community. And even as you talk about how it's changed for you, how you feel people's energy, it's almost like the more time you've spent in this world, learning this world, the better you've been able to bring that into all of your interactions in daily life and so on, which is really cool. It's almost you've strengthened your connection seemingly to this other realm through all of this work and these people, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, agreed. I think my goal someday, once my kids are out of the house and then my practice either is non-existent or flowing without me, is I'm just going to go to like South America, or actually, so I'm like 100% German. So going like to, because I think it's also important to honor your roots. And I'm so curious if like it's in my roots of like, if there's any healers before me, because there's not in my immediate or, you know, few like generations out family. So just honoring like your roots. I'd love to go back and sit with the land or whatever that looks like. I don't know. To see, just to kind of dive deeper into that, but that's like 10 years out as a 9-year-old, so I got a while.
That's super cool. Well, I know I could go on forever listening to you and asking questions, and I'm so grateful for everything that you've shared. I'm curious if we were to end on maybe a story of one of your patients or someone that you've interacted with that you think really captures a lot of what we've talked about.
Yeah.
Are there any that come to mind?
I mean, that one, like that said, "You are perfect," was amazing. However, I do have this, so I don't see, I mean, I see adults. This family came to me with their 14-year-old daughter, and she was 13 at the time. And I was like, well, I have a 13-year-old. So for sure. I mean, the answer was yes. But so she hadn't eaten in a year and a half. She was on tube feeds. She'd actually been inpatient when her parents came to me. So she was suicidal, hadn't eaten, self-harming. She'd been inpatient for a year and a half. And her parents were like, we have no hope. Like she won't eat. Like there's nothing else. There's nothing else.
Oh my gosh.
Will you do ketamine? And I was just like, teenagers. But of course I'm going to say yes, because I couldn't imagine if that was my daughter, and I have a daughter. So I said yes. And I told them that, though. I just had an open conversation. I don't treat teenagers. I don't know. This is a guess, you know, but I can't not, because I'm a teenager. So let's do this. Like, of course I want to help your daughter. And, you know, like a torn family, just like a pediatric torn up family, like it affects everything, right? Like this girl has a brother, like he gets no attention. Like, I mean, the parents are separated, but everything in that family is about this girl. All of their finances are going to this girl. Like, I mean, so to fix like a kid is to heal the family, right? Like, I mean, it's
and a generation,
right? And a generation, and probably multi-generations. We can go into that, like the ancestral stuff on psychedelics is like still mind blowing to me, and I'm only like not even understand it, but right. So anyway, so I said yes, and so actually this is where your question of like, how do people heal? Because I don't still know that this person wants to heal, but we have done probably 8 treatments now. So we did 6, and then she comes intermittently in school. But they took her out of inpatient. She's been home since, when did I start with her? This summer. I don't remember when. So they took her out of inpatient. She's now in 9th grade, going to school every day. She still hasn't eaten yet, but she's not suicidal. She's alive. Her parents like can let her go to the bathroom, and they can just like sit for a minute, whereas before like doors were open. I mean, there was no peace ever in their house.
Wow.
So at least her life is isn't eaten yet, but she comes to me and she's like, I love being here. So she's the one, like we did the full like prayer to the 7 directions, and like I gave her a stone, and it was special. Like she carries around the stone. I let her have the stone. And so she like, I'm a safe place for her, you know, but you know, we've talked about the eating thing, and like and I'm like, well, who would you be if you didn't have like the, you know, nasogastric tube? And so, but I ask those questions. Again, I'm not a therapist. Sometimes I feel like I'm doing work I shouldn't be doing, but I just ask the questions, and I'm very blunt with people. You know, but she appreciates it, and her parents are just like, you know, thank you. Like, you know, she can take a shower now without us like worrying about something happening in the bathroom. Like, I can't imagine that disruption.
I can't imagine.
And I told her parents, and even before I was like, if this works, don't tell her friends, because I can't be the teenage doctor. Like, I just can't. That's so much pressure, right? But I mean, I would love to save all the teenagers, but I literally just like, and now it works. I'm like, okay, maybe you can tell them, but I don't know. It's just, it's hard work though. And like, so for her, like I'm present, like with her, and like we have conversations, and I don't know. So
that's incredible. I'm covered in goosebumps just thinking about the impact of that on not only her, but her parents, and just the level of, just that release of stress and the ability to be safe in their own home and with their daughter. I can't imagine.
Her brother, right?
So
I think about her brother too, of like, now he can have some attention, like whatever psychology he was having from his sister having all of this attention. It affects
everyone. Yeah. And to your point about energy, right? The energy of the home and what that space looks like for every single one of them. Anyways, I have to stop myself talking because I think we're way beyond time. But this has been absolutely such an incredible conversation. And thank you so much for being here and for sharing both your personal experience and the experience as a physician and that of your patients.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's always fun to talk about.
Appreciate it.